Send me an email about a whole sponsorship plan that you're building. I'm very curious when it comes to fruitation.
Yeah. Let's say a new vision on sponsoring. So
Awesome.
I like to think ahead in the sense that uh, we try to be innovative in all the things we do and very entrepreneurial. So to have like a real good formula to value a partnership is for an e-com company mandatory
Got
because
it.
we have to like data is everything. So we need to report everything. So you can't say from a sponsoring, yeah, we think it works because that doesn't fit for the people working in an e-com business.
Got it. Indeed. It's so data driven, but that aligns very good with my first question that was on my list. Can you introduce yourself and what you do at Sunweb? Because this is a big chunk of what you're doing day in, day out. So maybe we'll start with that.
Let's say I have to say that I have two heads. One is the head of a brand manager, where I'm responsible for all brands within the strategy or communication and marketing strategy of all brands within Sunweb Group, which is Sunweb. And Eliza was here, and this, of course, on an international level in on all countries. So we are active in 7 countries. Next to that, I'm part of brand care, and brand care is the, let's say, the internal marketing and branding and also media agency. So partly I'm responsible for all, let's say, ancient media, offline media to buy and to strategize throughout all the countries. So
Wow.
also in all the countries where we are active. So it's kind of a role that is divided in, I like to call it more skill wise than a real role. So my skills are
Got it.
media, marketing, and communication strategy.
And where does sponsorship fit in that big mix of what you're doing or just the strategy of Sunweb and the group in total?
Of course, when you talk about sponsoring, it's part of my job as a brand manager to align the brand fit between brands and of
Mhm.
course the our brand. So if it goes around sponsoring, it's making the fit between those two brands, but also from an ecom point of view.
Got it. What do you mean with that last? Let's.
Yeah, like I was saying in the beginning of the conversation, is to I can't say this sponsorship is really good because we have to look at what it brings. And of course, when you look at sponsoring, I would rather look it from a media perspective. So we look at sponsoring as a new extra media channel, bringing us new audiences, new segments, new leads, and of course, at the end, new clients.
Got it. Got it. Great. A big sponsorship that was announced like last year is Anderlecht. Why did Sunweb took the decision to sponsor Anderlecht in Belgium?
First of all, it has to do with the objectives of the market. So in Belgium, it's a very challenging market, and we have to grow and also maintain our position. So partly is a decision of being more visible because
Mhm.
you can invest a lot more in media, but will it bring extra? And that was our way to try to reach and connect with more audiences. And of course, there's Brussels. If you look to the Belgian country, you see that they're partly the southern part. You have the, of course, northern part. But we saw that there's also an opportunity in Brussels to grow. And of course, Anderlecht is also a very famous brand.
Mhm.
Which brings us, of course, more awareness and more visibility. And sponsoring in football always brings an always on visibility because you're throughout the whole year visible. And then, of course, we were talking, and then due to the legislation, we had the opportunity to jump in as the main partner, and that visibility was an extra. So we decided to jump in.
Got it. Cool. So, you were talking about the sponsorships changing throughout the years and you having other objectives than maybe other sponsorships. Like, what wasn't working in the old way for an e-commerce brand in sponsorships compared to what it is now, how you can approach it now? What's like the big difference today compared to like a couple of years ago?
Yeah, the big difference from our point of view, like we are not we're not new in sponsoring. We had a cycling team. Now, with that cycling team, our intention was also to grow visibility in Europe throughout all the races. There are like 650 races in a year time. So there are a lot of races that happen at the same time. So it generates also an always on visibility. What we did before back at the time was that we tried to link the team, of course, with the team Sunweb being a presenting partner. But then again, you have a lot of audiences, people that you see in the weekend cycling in Belgium and in Holland, also in Germany. If you look to the popularity of cycling, it was number two in a lot of countries. And of course, with all the visibility, with the big races like Tour de France, the Giro, you have a lot of visibility also on TV, on radio, on digital, on newspapers. There's a huge opportunity over there, but you can be a naming partner. For us, the most important thing was to activate also that cycling community. What we did together with the team, we put together a site, the Prologue, which attracted all cycling lovers. And with that audiences coming on that website, we could target that audience again with our offers. So that was like the first step, what we did back at the time. Then, of course, COVID came. We closed down because the focus was on, like a lot of countries, on surviving the crisis during COVID. And now the opportunity came, but the world had changed, of course, and the first party data become very important. So, but there was no ideal way to really measure sponsorship. So that was one of the barriers that came always in when we were deciding about a partnership. How can we measure what's possible? And so, yeah, that's one thing, and I think we're going to talk about that later. For us, the problem was the measurability of a sponsorship. So if you look to from a traditional way, you have the branding, of course, and then yeah, you can do a little activations with leads and a win activation to go and to win tickets or to join the Tour de France. But that were two things, and the measurement was done by the number of leads that came in, and of course with the audiences coming on that website to retarget. But of course, then COVID came, legislation came, and then, yeah, we were searching for a new way to really monetize and really calculate the ROI of a sponsorship, because it costs a lot of money, but there's no real value behind it. There's no formula that makes it easy for a marketeer to say, okay, I put so much in, I get so much out. That's something along the way, talking with a couple of parties like you guys, came that we needed a tool to facilitate the ROI.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, the next question would be like, what was the moment that you realized you needed a different approach? But you just answered that question, so that's really good. Why do you feel that, like, for example, a data clean room would be the right solution for you? And that's in this sense, if
Because if you look from the perspective of a traditional way, is like I said, it's branding and some couple of activations which generate leads. That's the ROI of a partnership. But the clean room gives us a lot more opportunities, in a sense that we can measure our growth, we can measure segments, we can build segments. There's a lot in that tool if you put together all the databases, which gives you a lot of opportunities to build and to attract those audiences of a partner. And that's the thing we were lacking before that, before we knew. Of course, it's been there for a long time, but due to several legislation changes, you see that data cleanroom is a tool that generates a lot of possibilities for us, but it's still a tool. You have to, like, it's like when you buy a car, you have to put the engine needs some fuel.
yeah,
So you have a real good engine, but you have to fuel that.
for you guys, it's super cool to see. We will not dive in the numbers in this interview, but for you guys, it's really cool to see to that in that audience of Anderlecht fans, you are growing like really rapidly and gaining market share in that fan base. So that's a really good sign that you're converting fans into customers, and that's actually what you want to see in the partnership, of course. Even when you're not doing an activation campaign and just having visibility in that stadium, or you did an activation campaign in the past, we see growth in that audience, which is really cool to see, of course. How are you using We Have today?
So first of all, like you were referring, it gives like we build our sponsoring in several steps. So we have a couple of guidelines. We have the guidelines or guiding principles in branding value, but also in performance value. If you want to like set targets for the future, you have to know where you're at. So the first thing in that data clean room is to see what the market share is. As you're referring to in your introduction of this question, we see that our audience was declining and declining very hard in the last 2 years. So what we did was an upload of the database of Anderlecht and the database of Sunweb of the last 2 years to see whether people are booking. And of course, it's a worst case scenario because you can't know if the woman has booked in the family or it's booked under another name. But yet we see a lot of growth. And you see from the moment you appear on those shirts, on those jerseys, you see that the declining stops. And then you start building. And the first thing is the analysis. The second thing is that you can maintain the ROI. Every time you do an activation, you see that there is an increase in bookers. There's a reactivation of all bookers. And there's also an overlap that starts building and that starts growing. And with that overlap, you can target them on the online campaigns. And that's the most interesting part because you transfer those audiences in your normal campaigns where you're very depending on a lot of platforms and tech giants, but now you put in your own database, your own segments, and you can target them with, of course, and that's the nice part, in those overlap database you have fans. And sports sponsoring is really attached to the emotional connection from the fan with Anderlecht in this case. And what you see is when our campaigns in those overlaps, so the campaigns we serve to the Anderlecht audience is really a joint effort. It's like referring to Anderlecht and building that same connection with that fan using the partnership. And that's one of the most interesting things. So you can do the analysis. You can really, after each activation, you see the numbers growing. You see the number of leads growing. You see what's entering in the database, but you also see the overlap growing. And that's the interesting part because then you can really set some goals and some targets in some business objectives. And that's very important because back again to what is a sponsoring, you have, of course, business objectives, you have marketing objectives and communication objectives. And through the data clean room, you can really define clear business objectives because that will come out of the tool.
Yeah, the thing was with you guys, you had to sketch the situation. Indeed, 3 years before the partnership, the overlap wasn't growing as fast as your total customer growth at Sunweb, which means that the fans weren't converting as fast as your normal growth. And then right at the start of the sponsorship, you see an immediate reversion of that trend, which is crazy, right at the start, because everyone says sponsorship takes time, but we on that chart literally see the moment that the sponsorship starts, we see the trend going up, which was amazing. Did the data clean room or the insights coming out of the data clean room make you make different decisions, or did you take another approach to your partnership? Like, did it change your thoughts behind the partnership?
In a sense, yes, it changed the complete setup because then we know we have to really, behind every activation, there's a business challenge and also a business objective. So with that clean room, you get the opportunity to really measure every step you take in a partnership. Um, Before we were thinking about, okay, we have to build, we have to set up, but it also changed internally the way we behave versus that partnership. We have a team, we have a weekly meeting with the market leads, with digital specialists, with the marketing department. We have an ongoing weekly in this partnership. So the sponsoring is really an intense experience which we have never done before because This tool also provides us the way an e-com company works, getting data out of every week, seeing how it is moving. But also with Anderlecht, we have like a 2 weekly meeting where we have an intense partnership. It's not only the data clean room as such, is the facilitator to a more intense partnership. And then you talk about a partnership. We have like sponsoring is a very commercial relationship, but in this case, it is becoming a partnership between two brands, generating and profiting from each other to get more results. And that's what the clean room has started.
Do you know what question I get a lot when I'm talking with people in sponsorships is like, hey, do you guys discuss the results that come out of a data clean room together, or do you do it only at the brand side or only at the rights holder side? How does it happen between you and Anderlecht? Is it the joint effort and you're looking at the same numbers and really diving into the numbers together and making a plan to grow those numbers, or is it like, okay, we have the numbers and we draw our own lessons? I think with you guys, it's number one, like you're diving in the numbers together and trying to make it a success together. Eh?
I think there's like referring to my last answer, a partnership. So we decided in the beginning of the partnership to learn and to grow together because it was, I think, one of the real big first sponsorships in football regarding a main partner.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to play like with an open book and say we're gonna evaluate every activation, and there's full transparency on this.
Mm-hmm.
That's also the way we look at it because you can learn from it. So when you make some decisions, like in the 2 weekly meeting, we talk, we brainstorm. They come with an ID, we come with an ID. There's a final ID where the two brands are matched in an activation, and then they set up the activation. We set up from our part the activation, and that's very important because you have to work on both platforms, not only on
Mm-hmm.
our platform or on their
Mm-hmm.
platform. We have to intensify the message and enlarge the reach. And that's also part of our online strategy. We invest also in those results we want. It's a shared thing. So after that, we have an evaluation of the campaign, and all data from the reach of TikTok or the acquisition costs for a lead, everything is communicated in full transparency. And what you see that if you do this, everybody says, okay, we have a number to reach and we have
Mm-hmm.
activations and we have to do things. So everybody is aware of the shared objective, which is there. So
Mm-hmm.
all the learnings and the key learnings are put in the next activation because we don't have to come back with the same trick again.
Yeah,
What works
indeed.
will be intensified, what doesn't work will be skipped. And so we are building towards, yeah. And the way it's set up, maybe it's one of your questions. So in the beginning, we put together our calendar with their calendar. So we see where the shared moments are. So within a year, we have several moments of activations. We decide, okay, this is a marketing activation, which is more for the story, for a shared story to come. This is a business activation where we need to have leads, where we need to have an increase of our audience because there are some periods coming, like now, the last minute, which is very important. If you want to reach that on Google, then you see the acquisition cost of a partnership and the acquisition cost on your digital platforms are maybe a little bit in balance. So it's easy to attract a new audience, or it's difficult, but in this case, it's easy to put in a new audience because you're reaching new people. And that's one of the things that's really working well.
Cool, super. Can you tell us a bit more about it? Was a really big campaign, the Tour du Monde campaign with Anderlecht. How did you came up with the idea? And we saw in the numbers that it worked tremendously. Did you think it would work so well, or was it?
Yeah, we were a little bit caught in speed at that moment. So the sponsorship was decided on in October. So in our first setup, we appeared on the jerseys in the European away games. So it was decided very quick. So first of all, you have to get to know the brands. because that takes time. If you look, I think Tour du Monde has been very successful, was a really good activation. But I think looking back where we are now, let's say 9 months later, the activation would have been different. But again, the mechanics behind that activation were good because that's something that has been more developed throughout the past months. But the activation Tour du Monde came from the idea that if you are playing with the ball, doing a Tour du Monde like you do a Tour du Monde, and that
Yeah.
was the connection with travel. So
Mhm.
Tour du Monde going around the world, and then some players were activated. As Hazard, like, okay, Tour du Monde, do a Tour du Monde and tell us what your favorite spot is. Okay, that was kind of a branding campaign that was set out. And then people were also followed by newsletters, also introducing Sunweb as a partner. So it was all in the knowledge of presenting a new presenting partner, a new main partner, and partner about. The most beautiful activation I saw was in the stadium, where at the end of period, because you have to know Tour du Monde was in the beginning of January. It was really a rare moment to announce a new partner because usually it's
Yeah.
in the beginning of the
Indeed.
season, so you have to pick up, and it's not that interesting for, let's say, a fan that you buy a new jersey in the beginning of the year and you have to buy a new one in
Mhm.
January because that's the same season. So, and of course, part of your visibility is, of course, the jersey. So, jumping in, we needed to tell the story a little bit different. And of course, January is very important due to our early booking. So what we did was a joint effort. We did a branding thing with Tour du Monde, but we also, of course, gave the opportunity for Anderlecht fans to book their holiday with a little bit more advantages. And by the end, it was followed by an activation where in the stadium, that was the final in the stadium. There was, when you connected to the app, the music, Real Holiday song took over all the mobile phones and made a light show because Anderlecht is very famous for their in-stadium activations. The lights or your light of your mobile phone was taken over and that synced with the music. And finally, there ended up one woman, one female fan that won a holiday for her family, and she was very,
I saw it with the spotlight.
yeah. So that generated a lot of leads to compete with that activation. Also, the visibility in the app. So there
Mhm.
was a lot of, so the total campaign was a really good campaign that gave us also the confidence that we could work on a bigger thing than just a jersey where.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, indeed. But you build upon that awareness all the time. How easy was it to get started with the partnership and then leveraging a data clean room in it? Did it bring some hurdles internally or in general? How easy was it for you guys, Eve?
Let's say, and I think you experience that also, change is difficult in a sense that people have a lot of barriers. So you need a couple of believers that you can do it differently.
Mhm.
But believing in innovation is also being satisfied with not knowing that there could be no outcome. You can't get grip on the future because you don't know. It's like moving procedure. So we had the chance and we had the opportunity and we were lucky that on both sides there were people believing in change and believing in innovation. And that's for me the most important thing in this, that if you if you go in this kind of partnerships where the ROI through a data clean room is very important, that you have to believe and build, because you can't project the success of a next activation. You have to learn, you have to take time and to trust each other.
Mhm.
And that's what happened. In the beginning, you all have your view, but with the Tour du Monde and the success of Tour du Monde, we had produced ourselves an environment where we could rely on and where there was like confidence on both parties, and then starting to build. And you see that every activation is becoming more easy to produce. It's more, the story is more aligned. So it's and then again, we are not in process, let's say, for more than 6 months. So if you see to the results of the partnership now, you see that the motivation, the time, and the effort you put in is coming out.
Awesome. That's really cool to see, Eve. I think that's a good question, or a good way to end it, Eve. Is there anything you want to ask me in return? I don't know.
I think you've seen, yeah, yeah, your uh, let's say you have an innovation, you have kind of a tool, a facilitator. What are the barriers you run into when you, because it's a facilitator, and like I was saying, it's the engine, it's the motor, but you need the fuel. Is everybody aware of the fuel?
It's indeed, sometimes when we talk with, it depends on who we're talking with. With rights holders, sometimes they're a bit scared to implement the tool like this because maybe they don't know the tool, maybe they're not as tech savvy as they want to be. But also, like, showing the results, sometimes they're a bit wary, like, hey, maybe our results aren't that good. But that's just the thing, in my opinion. We never had a case that the results were not as good as they wanted and they were dissatisfied, because everyone is satisfied because they finally have a plan to start working with. Like, this is the situation today. We see that if we do this, we get X results. So probably we should do more of X and do less of Y that isn't working as good as they wanted. The fuel, yeah, it isn't actually that hard, but the perception of using a data clean room, it seems very advanced and they think it's a lot of effort, but you can do it fairly easily in the most basic form. You guys are leveraging it everywhere in the full marketing funnel, which is amazing, and that will give you a certain amount of work. But if you do it on a lower scale, like, for example, if you would just already get the insights and measure your partnership and use it for that, it doesn't need so much fuel. But we, yeah, most of the time encounter that they have the perception that it will take a lot of fuel. A really long
Yeah,
or a
but
simple.
that's an interesting thing because, of course, I think with the partnership of Anderlecht, there was a shared vision on doing something new and also making this as an example about how sponsorships could be. But there's a lot of team effort in it, and the intensity of the partnership is also, yeah, if we have to take a look at it in the hours spent of the teams. But that's also the thing, and maybe that's a conclusion of this. The data clean room makes it possible for us to see a sponsorship as a media. And that's also our main objective, is to create new audiences, to search new people through alternative ways, whereas we see a right holder as a medium. And then you have to integrate it in your media mix. And once it's integrating, it's handled like a Google channel or a TV channel or a radio channel. And that's the thing we did. And maybe that's something I did not highlight, but that's also one of the success factors, that it has kind of an approach that is done by a lot of people or handled by a lot of people.
So yeah, rights holders should be thinking more like a media channel today in comparison to a couple of years ago, of course. But it's a transition that's happening. So let's see if it comes true in the next 5 years. But I have really great hopes on that. I see that a lot of rights holders realize that they have to professionalize, and that the real competition is not the different football teams, but the real competition is giving the budget to Meta or Google or other big tech solutions. So they have everything in their hands to become the most, yeah, the coolest media outlet, or the coolest media channel. Now they just have to in place to make it happen, of
Yeah, but
course.
if you look to, and then if you turn it to let's say the Belgian media landscape, you see the success of streams, and it has its place next to Netflix, and that's the same thing as a right holder being there and being imported for local culture. If you see to all the local culture defines the identity, so local media should also be there, because otherwise we become all the same. For the right holders, on a specific country or an area are important for the cultural identity of the people. So if they act as a medium, there's a lot of opportunity for them also. They can
Mm,
always call me if they have a good offer. So we
good.
have a data clean room and we can set up everything.
Yeah, and indeed, the actually rights holders should work with you in the sense of you can transfer all of that knowledge working with them and having to educate them on like, hey, this is how you serve the new kinds of sponsors, the new like e-commerce brands that have to have a certain way of working. Maybe you can transfer all of that knowledge to them by doing a partnership with them.
Very humble in that, but what and then going back to the beginning of the conversation, maybe yes, that's a formula we are developing. We're almost there, so I'm happy to share that to our future shareholders.
Partners.
So, but it's easy. It gives a good value. It gives a good idea on what the value is of a partnership. Maybe for a next one,
Awesome.
I'll be happy to share that with you.
Thank you very much for everything. And yeah, I see you probably in the next couple of weeks a lot of times because we review the partnership on a very regular basis. So see you soon. And thank you very much for everything.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye bye.
Thank you.